Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Davis and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsors, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed many successful Kickstarter campaigns. A bunch of my friends use Mixum, and they love Mixum, and Mixum is a wonderful company. And I know a bunch of projects that are going to be using Mixum in 2022.
That's me.
Yes, you. Yes, you. But shh. So we can talk about that. We can talk about that, I promise. And they currently offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com, and they are running a promotion right now where listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a current order to get a 5% discount on their first order. So that is Mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive a 5% discount on your first order. And I know, and my guest knows, John knows, that every percentage point matters, whether you're funding it yourself, whether you're on Indiegogo, whether you're on Kickstarter, whether you're just doing a second batch, a third batch, a fourth batch, every percentage point matters, and it does make a difference when you are on a budget, or if you even have a huge budget, because all the money that you could save could go into something else. Also, I am sponsored by BCW Supplies, and you could right now use code POPANIMECOMICS to get 10% off your order. And BCW Supplies does have bags and boards, long boxes, card holders, anything to protect any of your paper goods, or store your paper goods, or store your CGC goods, or if you need stuff for a convention and that's about to come down, BCW Supplies has you covered. And that's POPANIMECOMICS at the checkout. Put it into the coupon box and you get 10% off your order, and that's what gets expensive. So please use that code, save yourself some money. I get an affiliate, and all that money goes back into this show. So without further ado, I have with me comic creator and writer Jon Westhoff. So up to the show. You're muted.
I muted myself so you couldn't hear me typing. I am promoting your show. But yes, thank you for having me on. I only came on so that I didn't feel guilty about using your code next month. Mixum has amazing prices on black and white comics. I will tell you that much. So if you are looking to print a black and white comic, check them out.
yeah, I'm only having you on because Chuck Pino told me to like 6 months ago. So that's the whole reason why you're on. No. What the real story behind this is that you were, I think, before either October or Thanksgiving, you had something going on with your Kickstarter. And obviously, I just couldn't fit you in. And I was very honest saying, look, I can't fit you in because there's not going to be enough time for me to promote it. And I'm not going to go in and throw you under the bus and not be able to help somebody. For instance, I need time to actually promote, people's works. And so you can't just randomly hit me up, everybody, and expect me to, go out there and not be able to do my job. So obviously, that's something that I think people need to understand, but you're here now because you do have an Indiegogo going on, and your book is Depowered. So what is the basic story of Depowered?
Well, yeah, and again, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, for anybody who's guesting on people like Andrew's shows, yeah, be considerate. You're on their time, so you guys are doing us all a favor, so I do appreciate it.
It's not even my time. It's you literally have to give me a week.
Yeah, or more.
So if you don't care about me promoting it out, I could get you in whenever you want.
Right.
The issue is that it's the back end, and that's the whole problem that I think people don't understand. But that's
I appreciate you helping us line up. And the stars have realigned because guess what? Because we weren't on Andrew's show, the Kickstarter did not make it, and it's all Andrew's fault. So we're back, and now, as of yesterday, we are live on Indiegogo. We're about to launch tomorrow. So we are back for another crowdfunding. Same book. We've done some pre-ordering. We're diversifying our funds here. We're finding different ways to get.
We're going to talk about this because this is the teachable moment. When life gives you teachable moments, that's all I'm going to say.
Take them where you can get them. But But so Depowered is still, it's still new. It's still coming out, whether come hell or high water, whatever happens, even with this Indiegogo, it is coming out. And it is a story of Dwayne Dax Jackson. He is a retired, so to speak, superhero. About 20 years ago, in the storyline, mysteriously, a group of people got superpowers. About 10 years later, they just as mysteriously lost them. And Dax is one of the many that struggles with that loss of his superpowers. So the story really centers on him, and we pick up the story. He's doing some superhero conventions, much like us as comic creators do. In his retirement, so to speak, he's selling a tell-all book and going around to different conventions, like a comic book creator would. And but some nefarious things happen while he's at that convention, and that's where our story picks up. And what's Dax going to do now that his life has really hit rock bottom?
Yeah, and there's a lot going on. We're going to dive into the story in a second here, but obviously you touched on a lot of things. So where did this story's idea come from and the inspiration? Because, we know what it's like to be downtrodden, and I've seen it, you've seen it, anybody has seen, somebody who's at the top spiral down.
Yeah. Well, my day job is as a social worker. So I, for better or worse, get a front row seat to a lot of those kind of things. But the original story was just me really wanting to do a Max ripoff. I'm a big fan of Sam Keith's The Max, and just kind of how he told this bizarre superhero story. So I created this character named Dax, right? It's basically a blatant ripoff of The Max. It even spells it with 2 X's. And I sat on that for a while. Just was like, I had this idea of this superhero that's just really bad at being a superhero, but there wasn't a story there. And then I had another story about retired athletes. I worked with a lot of people who always spoke about, the glory days. If they hadn't blown their knee out in high school, where would they be now? And I remember in the town near where I live, famous athlete Bo Jackson, multi-sport athlete, used to come into the store. And my friends, who work there and stuff, would say, "Oh, Bo Jackson, he's gotten so heavy, now that he's had all these surgeries, and look at him." And that always kind of fascinated me. Like people were very negative about his life post football. Like they almost thought, what could he be now that he's not this famous athlete? But to me, it was like, well, he still has a life. He has plenty of years to live. And it got me thinking about retired athletes. And then I realized, wait, the superhero story is actually that story together. That's my story. So I kind of jammed them together and said, oh, they're ex superheroes, and then they're kind of like, these former athletes, and how they cope with life after being, I guess, famous and all powerful, and feeling like they can defeat
And
the
having
world.
purpose as well.
Yes, right on. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say here. What is purpose to us? It's different to everybody, and sometimes maybe we put too much in certain areas that aren't as important.
Yeah, because it's a very interesting story because you're tackling a lot of questions, and I want to tackle the on the surface stuff first. So obviously, to dive into it, these people get powers, and 20 years ago, a selected group of people get powers, and not everybody gets powers, and some people are very good at their job with these powers, and they're, I guess, the A team, for lack of a better word. No, not the Mr. T A team. I want to clarify that. As much as I like Mr. T and the A team, it's not that A team, but they're the top superheroes, and they're the ones who people are calling in, and they're doing stopping the crime. They're getting the glory, and they're getting a lot of love. And then you sort of tear down, just like anything else in life as well, where there's people at the top of their game, and then some people are probably using their powers for bad as well. But then 10 years later, that thing just goes like a Thanos snap out. And it's this idea that the world has been changed because of these powers. And then it was changed again very quickly. And what was that really like, sort of setting the stage? Because your book's not about that in any which way. That's just sort of the impetus and a lot of the background, but it does carry a lot of weight. So what was that like, really creating that idea and building that out? Because that's a complicated idea and really drop setting, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, you're nailing a lot of it. Maybe if you're looking for some co-writing work, maybe we can write this together because you're kind of pulling it all out. You could easily focus on when they had powers, when they lost them, but I think people much more qualified than myself have told some amazing superhero stories. To me, I feel like I always work backwards. I'm always like, where's the character at, and then I'm like, oh, well, I have to give him something more to do. Like I said, I kind of had these. I didn't feel like people wanted to read about ex-athletes, but what if they were superheroes? Then you start to build the story backwards. So to me, it was like that's a more interesting story. I want to tell the personal story first. And then, of course you want to give some world building there. But exactly like you said, I don't plan at this time to go heavily into those early years. I just want to use that as the backdrop for how we got to this point and where does he go from here. So
Because
yeah,
it really sets up an amazing circumstance. Because again, the reason why I like this book is that I love My Hero Academia, I love Astro City, and I love where all that started with Super Folks. Super Folks is Grant Morrison's favorite book, and if you haven't read Super Folks, most people in comics don't even know what that book is.
yeah.
It is the greatest superhero book ever written, and it is one of the most influential books from Alan Moore all the way to Grant Morrison, and every top writer has ever read it. And if somebody hasn't read it and they're working for DC or Marvel or on their own books, once they read that book, it will change the way they view superheroes. It is legitimately the impetus for Astro City, and Astro City's impetus is out of Super Folks as well. My hero is, if I don't already say that. So it's kind of a crazy thing. So but I love the fact that we're now dealing with the after effects of this, because that is so much more important than what happened in those 10 years in reality. And what was this like? Because you're tackling such an interesting question, is that you wake up one day, you have powers, and then you don't have those the next day. And what do you do in that? And it's not just what do you do, it's that Dwayne is a shitty superhero in reality. And he has not necessarily, when you're a superhero, even if you're a bad one or you're the minor leagues, you're at least a superhero still.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when that's gone, what do you do? Because you don't have anything, and you have sort of, I guess, a monetization stream, but you don't have much because it's just your glory's gone in a lot of ways. And so, what was that really like, building that and asking that question? Because that's a messed up question to ask, and
Well,
it's a real question.
and for anybody listening, watching, I only gave Andrew the preview. I don't know if he's hacked my Google Docs or something. Now I feel like maybe I leaked some information about the story out there. But you're really digging into what I want to get into, and that is difficult, right? I want to tell human stories. Again, I usually start there with a character who's very grounded, and I like to kind of stay there with my other books. I've done that as well. I don't know why that is. Just maybe because I work in human services, and those are the stories I want to tell. Um, but it's a challenge, right? Because I want the story to be interesting. I like stories like you know blankets and stories like that are Essex County, that are very human, and there's no punching and stuff like that. I know that people can write amazing stories like that, but I feel like for my stories I do want to give some bigger things to think about, to not make it completely real world. Um, so yeah, it's a challenge though. Without divulging too much of the story, you're really nailing it. You want to, when you sit down to write, you want to think about that, right? He's get in the mindset of the character and what he would be thinking if he was at basically the top of the world. Again, if you like Marvel and you're thinking of like D-Man and these Alpha Flight characters, your C-list guys, you nailed it exactly. Like Dax, part of his thing is that he was that third string running back, right? He was that guy who made it, but he wasn't even the best, and now he can't even do that the best. So what is left? And he doesn't really have a fallback plan to go on. So he's kind of this hack. He writes this hack tell all book, and kind of how that will affect his peers in the group and stuff. Because again, after these moments happen in movies where their powers are off, or the end of the movie, it still goes on, right? In theory. So that's what I want to explore. What goes on after the big fight at the end? They defeat the big villain. They all lost their powers. Whatever happened, again, we don't go into it too much yet, but I want to explore what happens after.
And even going further into this, because obviously, he was a hero, and when you're a hero, he had the whereabouts that he got to make a real life decision, and he got to make a decision where he put himself at risk as a hero, and now he's back to just being ordinary, and it's the idea that that's in play as well. And then, well, he has, you stated, he has no backup plan, and then obviously he's struggling, where it is crystal clear with him that he doesn't have any major life skills. He doesn't have any business increment, and that he's doing a lot of, cons and superhero cons, and then he wrote a book that he's trying to sell, and all that's not working out. And it's clear that he is failing. And that I think it's pretty clear that he wasn't the best before, but he at least had a shot at a dream and at a positioning. And now he's back to square one, -5. And so, and that's a real thing. I mean, we see that with athletes. We see that with, a lot of people. We see that people, they're good at swinging a baseball bat, or they know how to throw a football. And then, well, they get cut. And then their only skill is to be a cashier at a grocery store. And every once in a while, there's a good story. I mean, there was a guy who was legitimately bagging groceries, and then legitimately, like 8 weeks later, he was in the Super Bowl and beat the Patriots on the Giants.
They're making a movie about him, Kurt Warner, 2-time Super Bowl winner.
No. Yeah, that is true. That is true. But there was a guy on the Giants, and he made this like great interception, and he was great bagging groceries like 8 weeks before. It's like a real Cinderella story where that guy but what was this like? Because we've seen it, and I mean I'm gonna ask something in a second here, but I'm really curious, because this is so real, and the way I read this is very different, where you and I both know people who are athletes who do conventions, making no money, didn't get paid their right dues, were, average athletes, and then they do all these cons. And I don't want to say it's pathetic, but it's a little sad sometimes with some of these people. And then we also see people at Comic Cons and a variety of other people, and they're sort of having to shell out and make it because they didn't get paid what they were due back in the day. And this is very similar to that, where he now is, I don't want to say he's selling out, but he is having to do these cons and write an all-tell book and really sell it to make a living, because he doesn't have an alternative.
Yeah, and not again, not to divulge all the secrets of the book, but part of that was seeing a lot of like the ex-wrestlers at the conventions, sitting at their table with no line. And again, we're working with people who just constantly talked about, the glory days. They still spoke about their high school nicknames, even though they were, 45 years old. And it was like, to me, they and that's not saying, I'm not trying to speak ill of them or say that they sit around all day, depressed or whatever, but you could just tell that there was a little bit in them, but they had so much else to give. They were, working in social services and wonderful with kids and great coworkers and all that kind of stuff. And, it was kind of hard for me to hear them, kind of pine for the glory days and all that, feeling like that was their shot. When they were great people, some of the best people I've ever met in my life, I come across in the social service field. But, and similar to that, even myself, thinking back about where I wanted my career to go when I became a social worker, and I was going to change the world, and I was going to, and 15, 20 years into it, and you're like, man, this is a lot harder than, I thought it was going to be. I kind of bring that mentality too.
Because that's interesting, because me and my friends talk about all of high school, but we talk about different things, like when I had like a great defense in a literary defense on something, and I had an entire class pissed at me for like an entire week because I was just solid. And then the joke is that I plagiarized the entire thing from Stephen Colbert, which is even funnier when I told my friend afterwards. And we joke about that stuff, but we joke about it and we laugh about it because it's funny to us. But me and my friends aren't looking backwards. But I know people in my grade who definitely look backwards, where I didn't peak in high school, and I know people who did. And it's a very interesting circumstance where when people peak in high school and then you see them, and like I'm now starting to enter my peak years. I am not at my peak. I don't think I am. I think in the next 2, 3 years I'm going to be really at my peak, and I'm hoping it lasts forever. I know that I'm getting to a stage where I'm not looking backwards. But I know people who have, and it's such an interesting thing because when I read your book, I'm like, this is a story not even about superheroes. It's about somebody who legitimately peaked or doesn't have the potential to peak, and then randomly, because they were at the right time, right place, got the ability to peak, but they didn't earn it. It was handed to them. And it's a very interesting story on that realm because, I hate to say this with athletes, but some athletes just were naturally selected. LeBron James is a good example of that, where the guy works hard, but he was naturally gifted.
He has some attributes, like Shaquille O'Neal had some attributes that put him ahead of. But yes, you do have to work hard too. We don't want to take anything away from him, but
Not to beat down, but no matter how hard I work, I cannot beat LeBron James on a basketball court. You could have LeBron James hop on one foot with an arm tied behind his back, and he would still beat me.
For sure. Although I've never seen you play, I've never seen your game. Maybe you got game, but I'll just go on a limb and say yes.
I could score 2 points. If we were playing a 20, I would score 2, and he would score 20. The game would be over in 90 seconds, but I would score 2 points.
Nice. I would score 0 points because I peaked a long time ago, and I got no game. But yeah, that is a lot of it too. I grew up in a small town. You go back to small towns, you see some people who are struggling. Maybe not even an Xbox, who knows? But yeah, that is a big part of it too. Yeah, you're nailing it all. Again, I'm going to change my Google passwords because I'm pretty sure at this point, or maybe I tip my hand too much, but I hope people, again, if you're picking this up off what I gave you, then I really hope, because this is where I want to go with this series. Right now, it's planned for 3 issues. It could be more. I think there is some interesting stories to tell, even characters outside of Dax and how they react to the world. I think
that's the other thing too that's very interesting about your book is that obviously we're following Dax, and also it's the what if. We all have what if moments. We all have, do we make decisions? Then I have had that response. You have had that response. Obviously, for those who don't know, I was living in DC up to about a year ago for 4.5 years, working in government, and then I just made a big change, and I'm like, well, what if I networked a little bit more? Would I still be in DC? Would I still be doing what I'm doing? And my goal was that I was going to stay in DC for the rest of my life. That's clearly not where I'm at. But I'm also saying to myself, a lot of other things have happened too. And, it's very much that, I think. But there's also been a bunch of mistakes. And I think that's also what's going on too a lot with Dax, is he's saying, I made mistakes as an individual. I don't know Dax's complete personal life and his family life and what that looks like, but it's the idea that I'm sure Dax made mistakes as a superhero. I'm sure Dax made mistakes, and I could have been an A-lister. I could have been made in a lot of ways. I could have gone the extra mile. I could have saved another person. Or I could have been more in tune to my family or more in tune to, my friends. And now they all moved on, and I'm now not a celebrity anymore. And it's also a lot of that because there's a lot of, soul searching, and I guess figuring out what mistakes he made and what he didn't, and how he's going to sort of deal with that stuff, because being a hero has consequences.
It definitely does. And again, changing those passwords because you're hacking into my stuff. But yes, it's a lot about exploring how we focus on certain aspects of our life, whether they're gifted to us or whether they're earned through hard work. And life for, if you're fortunate enough, is a long journey, and there's a lot of peaks and valleys. It's not about just that one time. When I felt like I was at my best, you gotta enjoy each phase. And Dax is really struggling with that, and Well, I mean, you're basically hitting it on the head. Maybe he always had. Maybe there was things he struggled at before that you know, even being a superpowered person wouldn't overshadow those insecurities. Which again, like you said, you mentioned a lot of the greats. I am never, you know, never going to compare myself to that, but I read stuff like Powers, or I really love the John Arcudi book of God Somewhere. I felt if I was gonna go into superheroes, because you know superheroes are a tough go when you have so many masters who've done them. Um, I wanted to tell, you know, a
Even
story
to
like
talk about that, even to talk about that, because you know what is, I mean, I'm very honest about how I feel. Like, I like reading, I'm a big Teen Titans fan. I love Teen Titans. I made it clear the only thing I want to do, and I will never write a comic for DC ever again if I get this, is 6 issues Teen Titan West, DC Black Label. If DC gave that to me, I have the story done. I legitimately will blow the smokes off of everybody, and DC will not be able to pay me enough to write a 7th issue. I will refuse. It is 144 pages of perfectness.
wow.
And it's the only thing I want to write for DC, because I don't want to write Teen Titans. I want to write Teen Titans West on Black Label, because I want to tell a superhero story in a very different way, in an environment that is not corrupted by the entire DC universe. But where I'm going with this, and the reason why I bring that up, is that I don't want to read Batman anymore. I've read every good Batman story out there. I've read Red Son, I've read Nightfall, I've read, you know, Scott Snyder's run on it. At this point, nothing that DC does with Batman is going to impress me. It's hard, but if they do DC Black Label Batman stuff, actually, that's not true. Wow, Fables. I can't say his name. It's slipping my mind. Bill Willingham
Yeah.
is doing the crossover with Fables, and I'm a huge Fables fan. That's the only thing that I'm reading from DC at this point. And Eat, Bane, Kills is really enjoyable as well. Because Franklin T, she is amazing. Or T Franklin, I forget how it's pronounced. But the idea is that I don't want a traditional superhero story anymore. Like, my hero is not a traditional superhero story. It really isn't. It's not even a superhero story at all. It's a coming of age story. It's coming up of somebody who doesn't have powers, who gets powers, and is chosen because he's a good, moral human being. And he struggles. And so, I don't know, like, I don't view your book as a superhero book. I view it as a personal book. I view it as a struggle book with somebody, and the superheroes are just the background. Like, I don't think it's a superhero book, and I don't think it should be presented as such.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's supposed to be the hook, right? But hopefully, once we get into some more issues, yeah, people will understand it. It is more, um, it is more of a human book, and that, you know, that's just kind of the writer I am. Again, that's just kind of where I'm at. And again, there's definitely people who've written some amazing stories. So I wouldn't, you know, even try to walk in the shoes of trying to write some of those superhero stories. But again, I did feel like it gave it interesting.
So it's, to me, it's the idea that, I don't know if you've seen Tiger and Bunny by any chance.
No.
Tiger and Bunny is a really cool anime. It's like 12 episodes, and some guy's power is slowly dwindling. And, you know, each time, and he used to be like a top hero, and his power is slowly dwindling. And even with super folks, there's that going on too, where the government, not to ruin super folks, but the government's manipulating somebody's powers in particular, and well, he finds out. It's a very interesting book because it's dealing with the darker side of superhero stuff. And I think that, you know, when I read your book, the superhero stuff was not what drew me in. Because I've seen everything with superheroes. We don't ever deal with the consequences of it. And to me, that's what we're dealing with. And we're asking bigger questions, is that, you know, when you're out of your prime, you lose your prime ability, what do you do next? And we talk about athletes, for instance. I mean, look at Michael Jordan, look at Shaq, look at Magic Johnson. I mean, Magic Johnson is a sick investor. Magic Johnson owns like 10% of Harlem, which is insane. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who's rich. I mean, Magic Johnson's business career is better than his basketball career, and his basketball career was great. So that should give an idea. But how many people get to do that? You know, and I obviously read a lot of myself into this, where I'm at a stage where I have a sponsor. I'm on my second round with Mixum. You know, how many people in the podcasting realm have sponsors? And you know what it is? It's a very small echelon. And you could say, well, Rogan has a bunch. Well, Rogan,
Well,
the reason why you laugh is that the fact that I'm in the 1% on that point, and Joe Rogan's in that 1%, as Joe Rogan's in like the top,
the 0.0001%.
but he's still part of the 1% that has sponsors. Very few podcasts have sponsors, and it's kind of a crazy thought process because most podcasts don't. Most podcasts don't get to this level. And I'm at a very different level than a lot of other people. And so that's what I read, and I understand because we're all Dax at some point. Where you told me 5 years ago I was Dax, undeniable.
Yeah. Well, and I hope Dax can get to the mindset that you're at. We'll see where he travels, but I do think that is part of the message. You know, yeah, see the victories around you. That you're not just a one-note person who won the Super Bowl, or like you said,
There's not Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, there's other things that give people value in life, and you can go on to be a hero in different ways. You know, would be the story I want to tell.
Yeah, no. It's very interesting, and I think you're touching upon something because you know I think that you know this could be read just as what do you do when you lose your powers and your life is a mess. But obviously, I read a lot more into this, and went a lot deeper. And I think that's something that you know you really figured out how to write is you know how to write on the surface level because I could have sat back and read what you sent me very, very nonchalantly and be like, oh, okay, this guy's struggling. How is he going to figure it out and fix his life? And it's clear that he's been struggling for a while. Versus saying and that's how I could have read it, but I read it obviously a lot deeper. And I connected it to a bunch of other stuff. So I think that's something very, very cool. But I'm not going to press too much harder because you do need to change your passwords. I'm going to let you know that My Little Pony 123 is not a good password.
Well, I'll add the exclamation point.
Clearly. I'm just saying, you know, it only took me 2 tries. I went with a money sign and then I removed the money side. So clearly.
I wear my my brony love on my sleeve.
I figured you would. You know, it was a random guess after I called up your wife and she told me all your passwords. But that's not the point. So having said that, you know, obviously I do want to go into some other things here and the other side of what's going on because what you did, and this is the teachable side of this interview, where you launched a Kickstarter and the Kickstarter did not work. I think it is a nice way. And look, the Kickstarter did not accomplish and set out to what it was supposed to do, and you didn't reach your funding. Which is okay. You know, obviously you met Sam Quinton and he's had a few failures on Kickstarter. So it happens and it just means that you have to go back into the toolbox and revamp it up and refigure out a strategy, get certain things done. Obviously, Larry Higgins gave you some advice on my last comic book hangout. Got another one coming Friday, just letting everybody know. I don't know if you want to come. You're more than welcome to. I'll send you the link tonight. But it's the idea that what was that like being on Kickstarter and figuring out even how Kickstarter works because that was your first one.
Well, actually, that's my first one as Part-Time Comics. You know, we launched a couple years ago. This year we've had 2 successful and then 1 unsuccessful. I've had 8 in the past that have been successful, 1 failure. Well, we did 1 Indiegogo and a couple other ones.
Let me ask a question then, because obviously I misspoke and I don't know everything about Perfect.
No, that's all right.
And so obviously when you launched those ones before, what was the timeline? Because obviously, you know, you're Part-Time Comics, and was Part-Time Comics the 2 that were successful? Was that pre-COVID, during COVID, or right in the last 6 months?
That was January of this year and May of this year. So Yeah, earlier in the year.
You know what I'm getting to, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out because I'll explain my logic actually because I think it's actually really interesting. Is that if those two Kickstarters were before COVID, COVID has changed everything. So
Yeah.
it's not a COVID failure reason. That's what I was getting at because I think that's important. One of the things that can affect Kickstarter is circumstances.
Sure.
So if you launch a Kickstarter in December, you might not have the same reaction that you would have in June.
Right.
I think is a fair assessment. And so I just wanted to make that crystal clear. But
yeah, no, and certainly it's circumstances. If I didn't have 11 other successful, and this was my first failure, maybe this was my second one, my first one, I'd probably be in a different headspace. But I had to think like you're talking about. Look at the successes. Where do I want to be? This is one step in the journey. I honestly went a little bit aggressive with this one. The highest I had ever raised on Kickstarter was Child Possession Services, which I have here. Earlier this year, $3,000, a little over $3,000. 100 and 20 something backers. I did another smaller book, around 100 backers, to about $2,000. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go for it on this one. I'm going to see where I can push it. And I put my goal a little bit too high, a little bit too assertive. There's a lot to learn there. I feel bad for the people who really pushed it, but honestly, I kind of went in saying, you know what? I know this is probably pushing my upper limit. I need probably 150 to 200 backers. I've never had that before. I'm trying for $4,000 with a book that is half the size of this one, so the price is less. So I kind of did some things assertively, and came up a little bit short.
This is so much more interesting because there's so much more teachable components. And I'm launching mine in January on Kickstarter. And obviously, my goal is going to be $750 for a podcast, which isn't that bad. And I think it's very, very achievable, especially because I'm collabing with somebody who has a big enough audience that I don't have access to. That's going to go wild over a particular thing that I'm running with, which is a metal card. And while I'm not going to make a killing on the metal card because collabs can be expensive sometimes, it's still going to bring in traffic. And I think Kickstarter's algorithm will be affected by it. But I digress right there. So what was this like, really making those decisions and saying, look, I just funded 2 books. I just did really well. And then I have somewhat of an audience, but even making saying, I'm taking the risk to go for it, because that's very tricky, knowing where you're at sometimes with things, and also just jumping into things and saying, look, sometimes you got to go for it because you never know. And Kickstarter's also been very, very wonky in the last 22 months, where it has not been a proven data position that if you've had 5 Kickstarters and you've grown by 50, the 6th one is going to do X, because the last 22 months have been unpredictable on Kickstarter.
Yeah,
to say the least.
People do love, to talk about their Kickstarter data, and there's so many factors that go into it that you can't control. And I do think, we mentioned at the beginning, I don't think it's directly 100, a huge percentage COVID related, but of course, that's catching up with people. People are having hard times. So maybe to make the decision to have my biggest goal with not a huge fan base was a bit of a misstep.
When was your project supposed to be?
It was the end of September through October.
That's probably why too. I could give you a good reason why.
Yeah.
A lot of stimulus money exited out in those months.
Yeah. And there was a lot of books in competition. It was a big horror month. A lot of people seemed like they were holding on to their COVID book. They were going to make their dream book, like what I'm doing with Part-Time Comics. We're all taking our leap. Well, if we all leap at the same time, it can cause, a little bit of a pile up on the highway. And that's okay. Again, that's something you can't control. I still got 127 backers, switched over to a pre-order through the site. Didn't quite convert as many as I wanted to. So I think that's another teachable moment. Not all those backers will follow you, where you go. And again, learning that I'm putting out, I feel like, at least diverse products, and that those don't always translate.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But I do want to stay on this, because obviously there's a whole thing which I have failed extensively in my entire life. I've been podcasting for almost 9 years now, almost 10 at this point. 10 will be next year. And And before that, I was on YouTube for like 5 years. And I've learned in the last 15 years a lot of stuff on how to present things, how to understand things, how to get sponsors, how to protect your sponsors, how to get renewable business. And I've failed more times than not. And so my whole thing is that obviously you've run a bunch of things, and what was this like really saying, hey, how am I going to pick up the pieces? Because I think that's something that people have a really hard time when they don't do well on Kickstarter. And one of the things that I don't hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see it in a lot of Facebook groups that my Kickstarter failed. What do I do next? I haven't seen it in a book. I haven't seen videos on it. And I don't know who talks about this because honestly, I don't like to publicly talk about my failures. I view it, and I'm going to be very honest, my failures in a lot of ways are viewed as a weakness, and I feel people are going to be pouncing and try to attack me. I have people who don't like me in the comic community. I have people, and that I feel, and I'm very honest, and whether it's right or wrong, that people are going to pounce on me if I say, oh, my Kickstarter failed. And that's one of the reasons why I'm now running a Kickstarter, but it has taken me almost 2 years to get here. Because what if I fail? What do I do then?
Yeah. These are the questions I like to talk about. In the end, wherever my comics career goes, I mean, I enjoy these kind of conversations. These are the peak for me. This is where, I enjoy. I'll probably never, write Amazing Spider-Man or something like that, being realistic where I'm at. But, I enjoy making these connections. I want to talk about these things. Now, again, 10 years ago, even being a social worker and training my whole life to talk about feelings and tough situations, and I still feel like if I had failed right out the gate, I too might have felt a lot of the same feelings. So some of it is having success, ups and downs in the past have helped me rebound a little quicker, being realistic about my goals and understanding that the financial part is important. I have contributors I have paid money to. I'm not, I am a social worker. I've said many times, I'm not extremely wealthy. So I can't afford just to throw money away. But at the same time, I know that I'm investing money that I've saved up, that I've gotten rid of collectibles and things like that to support this. I believe in this project. So the financial goal didn't happen this time, but it's about having other bigger goals and being realistic about the project. One failure isn't the end. But you're right. You don't want to. I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to fail on this Indiegogo, and the next year everyone's like, John never meets his goals. Why am I going to back his next project? You don't want to start to get that reputation.
It's also the idea that that's part of it. I think where people, if you fail, you don't want to fail back to back. In a lot of ways, it's never good. It's kind of like the team that goes to the Super Bowl but never wins it. You don't want to be on that team. Yes, exactly. Especially if you go back to the Super Bowl. It's not good in those circumstances. If you go back, you win one, you lose one, that's fine because that happens. It's not good, but it's not horrific. You could bounce back from it.
But take away what you can. Jim Kelly had a great MVP career. Scott Norwood, bless his heart, missed a couple kicks, still a great career. We put so much on these singular moments, and maybe this will help me write the story. I really feel like this is helping me flesh out the story in the book now because, I'm really thinking about these things and trying to say, to myself, I am not, Jon Westhoff is not the failure of one Kickstarter. I have more to offer. And I think, we will get there in some other ways, and it'll make myself and the company and the story that much better.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that failure is a necessary force of growth. I mean, you want to talk about me? I mean, it's just legitimately 9 years of interview failing up, and it's kind of just one of those things that obviously I'm here a lot because I failed a lot, and I failed early on. And also, though, there have been places where I have not failed at all, but I've taken a lot of lessons from other people's failures. I have looked at people, just to give a quick analogy, I've looked at certain people and their financial decisions, and I said, I'm not doing that. and I'm not talking about, just investing in things and how to evaluate stocks and other things, and even with comics and things like that, because obviously I'm very much into that stuff, you know, I've looked at other people's failures and I've learned my lessons from it. And I make decisions based on other people's failures. And then I look at role models and I find, you know, and what I'm doing is working. It's my money typically goes one way. It does not go the other way. And when it goes the other way, well, I buy more. You know, when it goes down, I buy more, and then it goes the other way real quick. So, but I think it's very interesting because going back to my point, I don't think people talk about this in the Kickstarter community. I haven't seen anybody, and there's a few Kickstarter classes out there, and I haven't seen anybody talk about what happens when your Kickstarter fails. What do you do next? What do you do to convert? What do you do to pick up? Because if we're not just the sums of one failure, then how come nobody's talking about this?
Yeah.
And that to
maybe
me,
that'll be my niche market. I can talk about all the many failures that are ahead of me and help people. I've seen a few, and to be honest with you, Andrew, that's part of what's helped me through this. I saw one gentleman who actually, Ronaldo Lay, the artist on Depowered, I got from his book, Todd Zerloff. He recently did a book called Confidence, and in the middle of the campaign, they were struggling, and he was reaching out. How do I correct it? And I kind of saw him really revamp his page, do some different things. He took the advice, he recovered. That was to me, that was such an empowering thing to see, like kind of live in one of the books, one of the groups we're in, Indie Comics Conspiracy. And then I've seen another gentleman recently. His name is Aaron. He's relaunching his book soon, but he also failed. And I saw a couple other creators around that same time failing, and it was kind of like, I don't want to see anybody fail. I want to see, you know, my peers succeed, of course, but I feel like this shared failure might help us. And I think if we can take anything away, maybe we can be the catalyst for people talking about these.
I'll give a great example. So my Kickstarter didn't get approved, and it probably, if it got approved, it would have done fine. I probably would have done maybe 2,000 because I would have pushed it out like crazy, and I would have gone down a very aggressive position. But you know, maybe I wouldn't have done well. You know, maybe I wouldn't have done as much money. Now I'm retooling, and I have a collab, and may or may not be launching somebody's entire product line outside of this Kickstarter. And I got a feeling with this project, I'm going to meet my goal, and I'm probably going to do more than my goal. I might do double my goal very easily, and that this thing is getting refined, and I'm doing what needs to be done in it, and my business positioning is being changed, and my relationships and actually telling people when it's going to drop and doing certain things is really changing. And it's the idea that while I'm not thrilled with Kickstarter per se, it is crystal clear to me that I'm going to make Kickstarter want to give me the greatest project ever for 2022. That is my goal. I want that title just so they have to give it to me after they denied me a good opportunity that would have been decent. And but this Kickstarter that I'm building is going to be much better than anything else that out there.
You're taking that opportunity, even though, you know, like you said, it stings a little bit, but you're taking, and that's really all you can do, right? Take what you can control, put the time in, and but you're setting realistic goals too. I think that's part of it too. I don't encourage people, you know, don't put yourself in financial ruin, you know, for your hobbies or your goal. I would never encourage anybody to do that.
I teach that. I get flack for that.
Yeah.
I legitimately get flack for that. It is insane. And I've said this, and I got flack for it. Somebody puts up in a group or whatever, they said, "Oh, why are you all judging people when you see them spending all this money at Comic Cons?" And I said, I don't judge people for spending money. I judge people for putting it on their credit card. And somebody said, "Why are you judging somebody? You don't have a right to judge somebody." I said, "I have a right to judge people for their actions. We do it all the time. We do it every day. I just said something honest." And what I figured out real quick about this guy is he was at a Comic-Con and he probably put a bunch of money on a credit card and realized when I said it, oh, I just put $700 on my credit card. I make $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000 a month. I'm going to be paying this off, and it's not going to cost me $700. It's going to cost me $1,200.
Right, and it's the same going in Kickstarters. You got to be smart. If you don't have the money to invest up front, you know, you need to set your goal. And also, I've seen a lot lately that have been really, I mean, some really huge goals and not getting there. Again, I think it's okay to be assertive, aggressive with these things, try your best like I did.
Right. So
But
I'll, I'll
if you're not realistic, you're going to set yourself up, to be disappointed because money
so
is not infinite.
I'll give you an example. I don't have money to build out a metal card. So what I did, and this might be a bad rule, I gave equity in that metal card pledge to my collab because I said, if we don't meet our goal, I don't owe you anything, but if we meet our goal, you're getting a piece of it.
Yeah, I've
Much
done the same. Hey, I can only pay so much of a page rate, but if we're successful, you'll get copies of the book. You can sell the books later. There's other ways you can work it out.
So a metal card is just a metal card. I can't like pay somebody a page rate for a metal
sure.
card.
Right, different.
But we have an arrangement where they're getting a percentage of it, and it's a substantial percentage. I mean, it's a percentage where they now have a vested interest in promoting it out.
That's good too.
Where I mean, that was the point because I don't want their money as much as I want their network. See, I'm thinking differently, and that's my whole point. Is that it's kind of like, if you said to me, I can't pay you, Andrew, but I want you as a co-writer, I might say, cool, I want credits, I want certain books, I want the ability that, can I print, my own variant with Mixum, for instance, and that I could print
code Andrew Davis
run, and I could sell it, it's all mine, it's not yours, I'll pay for the artist, and that my name's on it, and let me handle it, and now I have a Pop Anime Comics variant. And now I have complete control, and let me handle the business side of it, and I have a comic credit. And all of a sudden, you know what is? There's something in there now. And it's a way to do business because I'm very different than other people. And I think a lot of people are not creative. I like to structure deals creatively.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us in the comics community have a hard time with that aspect. So we need to talk to people like you who are open and honest and thinking differently. And this is educational for me because I definitely come from the thing of like, I just want to give people the best product for the best price. And, I don't always have my marketing hat on and my assertive salesman hat on. And I need to do better with that too.
I'll explain a concept. If I build out a firm, my goal in the next few years is to basically put all this stuff into a holding company. And the reason why is that I'm expecting, right now, I'm cash positive in this company. My eBay business is working the way it's supposed to work, and I'm basically buy and sell comics, and then I take the profits and I put it into the stock market, into dividend producing assets. And then what I figured out is that I want to build out this entire thing, and if I'm making real money, I want this in a holding company. I have a passive T-shirt company that I don't touch, and it does what it does, and I don't look at it. That's going to be my holding company. And the whole thing is that if I build out a team, I am going to hire somebody whose job is to challenge every idea, and they will be paid a lot of money, but their job is to challenge it and find the hole and be aggressive, not a team member, but because if they say no, they're going to complement my skill set. So if I say, let's go build a T-shirt company and let's go and give it out and have a bunch of people and print, 200 things and find people are coming out of the subway before New York Comic Con and just have them blitz New York Comic Con all wearing it and give it out for free. I'm going to simply say that's a horrific idea. Here's why A, B, C, and D. And say, let's go to the Uber instead. And the reason why, and that's just a very loose example, is that person is going to see something differently. That's what I am, is that I see things differently. If I come into somebody's Kickstarter campaign, I'm going to give you a different way to look at something. And you're going to be like, that actually makes a lot more sense because I'm going to compliment somebody like yours' skill. Somebody like, Niobe Comics, not to put him on blast, not to put Larry on blast, but there's certain things that I see very different than Larry does. And it could be very beneficial to Larry with ideas and positioning. And that's not to say I don't like Larry, but I see things very differently.
I think people take feedback differently. Like, it's okay. Like you said to the gentleman who took offense about you're talking about advice just is what it is, right? It's just saying, this is what I see. This is my opinion. take it. When people internalize it, that means it's something more inside them that's eating at them that they're not able to process it. You know
what I said. He didn't like what I said because I hit a nerve.
Clearly.
And then I backed up my claim and I wouldn't let go. I said, look, I've been doing this forever, guys. I've been in the con scene. Con economics are like my bread and butter.
Sure.
Like, this is something that I'm not talking anymore. I'm an opinion. I understand how a convention works from top to bottom economically. I understand how it works, and I understand what they did. I understand why Square is an evil company and ATMs are the worst. Like, people don't understand that I know this, and I'm more than happy to go through it with anybody if they don't believe me, because I will change, and this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. That's why I encourage and I lecture on this a lot. You know, and then people have paid me to talk about this, is that I say, bring cash to a convention. The ATM is not your friend. It is not your friend. Those things get stocked up with $50K before cons for a reason.
Oh, yeah. All those
Sorry, so that's a big tangent.
No, that's great. In comics, we don't talk enough about the emotions of our failures and other things. We don't talk enough about the finance. I think these are conversations people need to have instead of just, yeah, your Kickstarter looks great, which is good. We want to build each other up, right? But we need a lot of honesty out there, or our peers are going to continue to fail. You know, we've seen so many people in comics, you know, blow their budget, burn themselves out. They're making comics for a year and they can't sustain it because
I'm going to give you a crazy position. Do you know how many people say, and I've seen this more times this year, 6 years ago we used to have more money. 5 years ago I started comics. They don't give that part. They say 6 years ago I could afford a boat and we had more money in my family. And now I work a 60-hour work week and we have less money. And my response is, when did you start comics? Because if you're producing, and I'm not saying don't do it, that's nothing of this. And if this, at some point, I'm sure somebody's going to come at me and try to cut this out, and I refer them right back to this point. What I'm saying is that if you are producing a $20,000 worth of comic book work and you're spending $20,000 and you're fronting the money and then you're paying yourself back, but you can only pay yourself back $16,000, you know, naturally you have a $4,000 loss. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You just need to understand a P&L statement. When I go and buy and sell comics, I know the exact number to the cent of how much I made on every book. I know the exact number to the cent how much money I make in my money and in my investment. I'm very diligent on it for a reason. And it's not, I don't go and say, let me go buy all these books on debt. I have no debt right now in my world. And the point is that there's nothing wrong with, actually I have $32 in credit card debt, which will be paid tomorrow. It's due on December 22nd. So that's not debt even.
Right.
I'll tell you what I bought. I bought a Cowboy Bebop comic.
One single comic.
So I have $32 in debt that will legitimately be paid tomorrow by 12 o'clock.
Yeah. And I don't have the same financial goals as everybody, but you do need to be smart about it. Because again, you know, resources are not infinite. You're putting time into it, so you don't want to be taking away from family time or your work, you know, load, or having to take overtime at work because you've made poor financial decisions. So, you know, be smart about it.
Again,
small,
I'm not saying,
you know, build from there.
That's not what I'm saying. This has nothing to do with making money or not. It's the idea that if you have, you know, if you sit down with your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatnot, and you saved up $3,000, you should not be putting the other $3,000 on a credit card. You know, those are decisions that I understand. You want to do your comic, but why would you put, you know, money that you don't have into something that could fail? And like, I don't get that logic. And I understand everybody's like, oh, it's not going to fail. But, you know, here's what happens is that, let's say that you really need $9,000, but you get to your 6. What do you do then? Because a lot of projects need additional money. My Kickstarter is legitimately my podcast. The overhead on my podcast is so dirt cheap that my project's overhead is not like anybody else's comic, because I don't have to print anything minus a metal card and a postcard that will, and those things, if booked, I need to sell legitly like 20 postcards to be cash positive. I need to sell approximately like maybe 20 metal cards to be cash positive on those rewards.
Yeah.
And then my digital stuff that I'm selling, it's digital. It's an email click away.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people don't understand going in is comics. The margins are so thin. You got to really, think outside the box and do some different things. If you're just planning, I'm going to go to Kickstarter, like you said, and raise $9,000, it's probably not going to happen. You got to have a couple different avenues. So,
and also what I'm doing, and this is the other thing, is that I'm collabing with people, and I am utilizing my network, and I'm letting my network know that I'm coming, and that I have friends who have big networks. So when I go reach out to people who have been on my show, and I'm in a different position where you don't have a show, I have a show. So when my Kickstarter's going, I'm going to be dropping ads in all this. My social media is going to be crazy. I'm going to be doing 50 interviews in the month of January. I mean, you're going to see me, and I'm going to be everywhere. I'm going to be everywhere, where people are going to see me doing legitimately 14 shows that I do here to 16, and then I'm going to be doing like another 40.
wow.
So I'm purposely gearing up for it. There's a reason why, not to mention that my network is also going to be working, and I'm purposely doing it. And then my collab partner on just one thing that legitly is not worth all that much money is going to be doing some posting and bringing his audience in. So, I mean, this is all just planned out because I don't win battles in Kickstarter. I win them before. I plan. This is all tactful, and that's the thing that I think people don't understand.
Yeah, that was part of the impetus in starting a new company too. I feel like, I think it's okay, to be more casual and things like that. But I was kind of wanting something a little bit more. I didn't feel like my partners were on the same page with where they wanted to go with how we. So I took some time away, and then I said, you know what, if I'm going to come back, I'm going to do it on my own. And then, down the road, if things are good, I'll maybe bring in a partner, or no, if things are going well. But I really felt like I needed kind of control of what we were doing with marketing and where we wanted to go with books. And, again, I think comics are okay. If you just want to jam with your buddies and put out an 8-page comic that you Xerox yourself, I do that. I love that. But if you want to do something more, bigger stories, pitch things, sometimes your buddies aren't going to line up with where you want to be. But I still work with all of them. I still love the guys. But being in a company with people is a challenge.
It's not easy to be in companies with people. I mean, I'm a sole, person for a reason, and at some point, I don't know how I'm going to handle staff, and that's going to be a very interesting position for me because I don't think that necessarily that I think it's going to work out fine, but again, it's also when you have people or partners, it's sometimes they come first, sometimes elements come first. Money also dictates, and then also there's a lot of stuff that could happen, and then it just gets tricky sometimes in that regard. Yeah. But even going further off of this, and what I want to get to is that you decided to do something very interesting with your Kickstarter, where you basically then said, hey, I'm going to run a pre-order. And you went on, I think, on either Etsy, I think you went on, or no, Store NV, right? Or NY.
Yeah. Store NV, yep.
And so you went on to more of a pre-order position, and that's a very different position because I don't think most people, if they fail on Kickstarter, a lot of people say, look, I'm going to just retool and make the Kickstarter better. And they wouldn't go that direction. So what prompted that idea? Because that's very different than, that's more what I would probably do.
Yeah, unfortunately, that decision was prompted by a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of a fatigue. When you do a Kickstarter, it can be very exhausting, especially when you're, the sole person of the company.
I know.
Yeah,
9 years, guys. 9 years.
So yeah, that honestly, that was just me saying, you know what? We had 127 backers. If we can convert 100 of them, you know what? We can still kind of get to where we need to be. And I just, again, you know what? I was a little bit assertive with the Kickstarter goal. I wanted to try this. Unfortunately, though, I think that was not the right decision. I did not, people don't get as excited about.
So did you think that because I'm curious because obviously I love funnels. I love funnelytics. I love building funnels. I love diverting customers into a whole downward trajectory. I love that concept. A lot of my ads, the entire Mixum ad in a lot of ways is a funnel on a podcast, and it's built a certain way. Um, that ad is actually built a certain way where it's to bring you downstream. But do you think that that idea didn't work because people don't get excited about it? Do you think that people just don't understand what's going on? Do you think that just people in comics are just unfamiliar with that marketing play? Or do you because this is so interesting to me because I happen to think that I mean, I love funnels. I love marketing funnels. I love all that stuff because that to me is the future to sell a lot of product really quickly.
I agree. And I talked to other people about that. And the idea was like, okay, Kickstarter didn't work, but we really weren't getting any traffic through the site yet. So it was like, okay, let's bring some people to our store. They'll follow our store. Then we can email them directly, like you said, the funnel. And we got about a third of the backers, and that's great. But those were probably the core fans that really a lot of times back a lot of the books that I put out. But then the other people, the fringe people that maybe back because they saw it on Kickstarter or saw one of their buddies repost it, they're probably not as excited. Maybe they didn't even see it, because even though I posted, you can still post messages to the backers afterwards. I don't get a lot of responses to those messages. Who knows? They go to spam. People don't see them. People don't check email. So some of it's about maybe it didn't get in front of their eyes, but I'm sure a certain percentage were it's just there. Again, there's excitement about crowdfunding and supporting. And I feel like a lot of indie comics relies on that. And maybe to its detriment, right? You would think, Comics Tribe, amazingly successful, Tyler James would be able to just put his book at this point on a pre-order and people will get excited. But they got to put it on Kickstarter. They got to do the hype train. People love that stuff.
To even talk about that, because I get excited for previews every month on Midtown Comics. I get stoked for it. I know the day it goes up. I know when things are going up. I get excited for it. I'm thrilled for it. I love it. It's exciting for me because I'm like, oh man, this. Cool. I'm going to get that over there, and it's great. And I love previews. I get more excited for previews than a bunch of these Kickstarters, honestly, because I also say, look, I'm getting, A, B, C, and D, and I'm super excited for this book that's coming out. So I don't know. It seems to me that, because to me, it seems like it's a foreign concept because I know comic readers who love previews. They get excited like I get excited for previews. I've been in groups where all we talk about is previews. There's Discords that we talk about previews. And I know people who go out and buy the magazine and run to their comic shop legitly and be like, did I miss it? And their shop owner is like, you legitly have 3 weeks to place your order. Like,
I know somebody who had a podcast where they would flip through the previews.
I was on that show, and I probably was on that show. The point is that I love previews because I get excited for it. So I don't think it's that. I mean, I could be wrong though.
Yeah, I think indie is a little different. Like I said, when I flip through previews, I get excited because I'm like, ooh, I want some of that. You feel like you're in the shop. When it's like, oh, I'll click and order that book later. They'll have it on their site. You just don't get as excited. And Kickstarter's flashy. You can add perks, you can do other things. So I think there's a little bit of that. So I'm sure at least 25% of the backers just weren't as jazzed to do it. They were probably like, they didn't make it on Kickstarter. We'll see if it comes out later. We'll pick it up down the road.
Do you think that that's also it, where people also are saying, look, when something doesn't get on Kickstarter, I get my money back and then I move forward? Because I was on with Dawn Mateague and JP Roth talking about it.
Could be.
And what I was saying to them, and they didn't understand until I explained it. And I had like 1,500 people watching me too that day. and I must have influenced somebody. I said, look, when I go back your project, and then this is how I think, because I'm different. My money's budgeted. My money is on a mission every single month to do something.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's making me money. It's that I got $100 for food. I got $100 for comics. I got $100 over here. I got $100 in my bank account. God forbid an emergency. I got $100 into my, gift thing. This month's a little bit more expensive on that.
Sure.
But it's the idea that when I got $100 on a Kickstarter. So if your book fails, but I backed, that money's gone in my budget. That doesn't. So what that means for me is that if your book fails and I had $30 coming to you, what happens is that I get that money back, but now I have a surplus. So the next one I don't back.
Well, and I'm going to sound like a jerk for saying this too. I had one recently that failed. I backed because I wanted to see them get to their goal, and they weren't getting there. Then they relaunched. They made their lower goal, and then I kind of thought to myself, well, I'll pick it up down the road. Right now, the urgency wasn't even there for me. Now, again, that's just me. I can't project onto other people, but for me, I think what you're saying makes sense.
It has nothing to do with urgency. I have a battle plan in place.
Yeah, right.
And so I back one, maybe two projects if it's a lower thing. So if it's a $20 book, and then maybe I'll back a $10 book. But if your book didn't make it and I was spending $30 and that was my September book, I am not backing two projects in October. It doesn't work that way. There is a mission, there's a goal, because it works. And maybe it's because I worked in military organizations. Maybe it's because I have a certain mentality, but maybe it's I'm disciplined, and it's not a punitive thing to anybody on Kickstarter, but this is how I function. And
I think that's being realistic. That's how most people function. We all have budgets. We all have. There's only going to be a small percentage that just can buy every thing they want. So yeah, you're right. And we had a couple big backers.
I legitimately wear almost the same thing every day, purposely because I don't want to think about all this stuff, because I have bigger things to think about, such as building a holding company.
Yeah.
Like that's my whole thing, is that I say I got $30. What project is up for $30?
Yeah.
Maybe make its goal, whatever. I'll get one next month. And then I just move it out, and I move it out, and I move it out. And obviously I'm very selective now, where I know certain things that other people don't know now, because when you interview enough people, people tell you things, or you start seeing things on the wall. And it's not that hard to figure out what's what anymore.
I mean, all the factors that we're talking about, I think, if each of them played into a certain percentage, it's going to bring it down. But we'll see. Indiegogo's a different crowd. So again, I'm just trying to.
Science to this. There's an absolute science to this. And once you understand it, and look, I like Tyler James, but I don't get it. And I'm going to throw you a question, actually, because Indiegogo's a different crowd. Indiegogo's interesting. I like Indiegogo on print on demand. Makes sense. There's a book I got to back actually tomorrow when I get my paycheck. Shotgun Samurai.
Nice.
That book sounds awesome, right?
Yeah, easy sell right there.
It's a great book. I recommend you pick it up if you get the money. It's like $20. It's like a 250-page manga book. It's awesome.
That's amazing.
$20. Oh my god. It's an awesome book. But I digress right there. The idea is that my whole thing is that it's a science, and I like Tyler James, but I'm curious how you feel about this. Is that isn't the goal when you're producing comics and on Kickstarter, and correct me if I'm wrong, to get off a Kickstarter at some point, or have your business not directly tied to Kickstarter? Because I don't know if people remember, but didn't Instagram and Facebook go down for like 18 hours just recently? Yeah. And what happens if your Kickstarter goes down, or they go down for 18 hours or for 2 weeks? I mean, what happens then? I don't know how you feel, but the way I feel is that I'm diversified as an entity. I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Rumble. I'm going to be in podcast format soon. I don't know what other video services there are out there, but once I find one, I'm going to be there too.
Yeah. And I do think that, again, everybody's goal is different. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I do feel like by and large, most people say yes. They'd rather not do a Kickstarters all the time. If I have 6 books coming out in a year, I certainly don't want to do 6. If that's what works, that's what works. And a lot of people, just constantly do rotate through the crowdfunding. But yeah, my goal would be to have a little bit of each, right? Maybe a Kickstarter once a year, some direct sales, get into previews. you know, a little bit of each, right? That would be my goal. And I would think most creators would say that, right? We want to do as much creation as we can and have enough distribution channels to where we don't have to do the crowdfunding, because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So 3 in 1 year was probably too much, you know, for where I was at. But again,
You
you
think
say
I
it's a science, and I like having this conversation with somebody like you, because again, I think you think very logically. You're very, that's where you're at. I'm a very emotional thinker, so I think differently. But I think there's a lot of factors that go into anything, and you've mentioned a ton of them. The time of year I put up other books. You know, I wasn't in with the horror crowd. People were back in horror stuff. They're excited. You know, where people's funds were at. There's so many factors that you can't control. You have to look at your data and try and do your best.
I could tell you that chances are is that with my podcast, I'm doing that once a year. I have no desire to run a podcast thing more than once a year. It makes sense. Around January,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going to give everybody fair warning that you better have your shit together if you want to back my Kickstarter. And I don't really care if you have money or not, because you know what it is? If you think you're going to get me for the same price on certain things that I'm going to be offering in June when you need me, it's going to be more expensive, and you deserve to pay more. You really do deserve to pay more if you don't back the Kickstarter. That's just what it is. I'm letting everybody know that right now off the top of my head. There's 48 hours. You better jump on it, everybody. I'm letting everybody know that.
Jump on.
As far as comics go, you know, my goal is maybe to run 1 or 2 if I ever get into the business, because I build differently, where my Kickstarter is goal and business is going to have built-in prices of variants that are con exclusive or web store exclusive. And that's a page I took out of Jamie Tyndall and what he's doing with Merc Mac, because they have New York Comic Con exclusives. They have a bunch of exclusives that are not on the Kickstarters that they do. And that's something, and I throw this question in which that if you believe so much in your project, then why are you not producing a non-Kickstarter variant to sell at cons? And that's the ultimate question. And you know what it is? You know what that variant can look like? It could be a blank sketch cover, where you
That's
just
a good one. I need to do those. Yeah, like we did this one was just in general, but you're right. I had never done a variant before. I didn't think anybody had any interest in it. It sold like gangbusters. It's just a buddy of mine. He charged me a great rate. It's an awesome cover. It pops. But you're right. You got to think, you know, those are options. Fans like those things. Let them have what they want. I always thought, I don't like variants. I don't want to overcharge people. That's not really your role, right? You present the product, and if people want it, they buy it. You know, let them choose.
No. I absolutely want to sell variants. I want my own. I want variants that I want to build. You know, I'm a variant collector. So when I go, and this is what people don't understand, is that I'm a consumer first and foremost. So if I come in, if somebody hired me as a consultant on a Kickstarter, you know, or even if I'm writing, you know, dialogue, I'm writing the story, I'm script editing, you know, I'm the marketing guy behind everything. You're damn right I'm going to tell you what I think. And I'm going to be very, very open. I'm going to say, look, we need a variant, and this is what A, B, and C charge, and here's why we're going to hire them. And I'm going to build out a statistical argument for you why we should hire person A who's charging $150 and you only want to spend 75. And I'm going to say, here's why. Because this person in a year from now is going to be a superstar, and we're going to hold 50 of these books and not release them until a year from now. So the other 75, we're going to make less money on the front end, money on the back end. Or we're going to go shoot out 25 of these to CGC because this person is going to be a superstar. And if you think I'm wrong on that, go look at both my shows and go look at all these people and look at the dates that I interviewed them. And I guarantee you that you will find that I've interviewed superstars before they became big. How did I know how to do that? It's not that hard, everybody. I legitimately could have booked Sun Kumanaki for pennies on the dollar, which he charges now, for a cover if I wanted to. Legitimately like 4 years ago. I could have booked her for pennies on the dollar, and then I could have harbored like 40 of those books and sold them for triple what they're worth.
Wow.
Essentially what I paid for, what I was going to sell them for technically. I use her because I can use her as a really good example.
Yeah.
My point I'm trying to make is that I think differently because I'm a consumer and I understand what I want, which is what other people want. And I also understand how to sell it really, really, really well.
I can tell.
I like this stuff.
I look forward to taking your classes in the future because, again, I've been doing this for 12 years and I have a long way to go in that. But I feel like I'm getting better. And again, I do feel like this recent Indiegogo will be a success. I've set a very realistic goal for it. And that'll catapult us into the next issue and then eventually a trade. And I think that things will even out. But, Kickstarter.
Let's talk about the Indiegogo thing because obviously what is that like? Because that's launching tomorrow. I actually don't have the link up in the description, but I will add it on later. And
I put it in the chat.
So you can go into the chat, everybody. It's in the chat.
There it is in the chat. Oh, thank you. And I need to get a short URL for that because that thing is obnoxiously long. But so yeah, Indiegogo, despite their really long URLs that they post, is actually haven't used it since I believe my second crowdfunding campaign, maybe my third, which was Banthology many years ago. The cover's on the wall right behind me. But yeah, I haven't used it for various reasons. Kickstarter's been, very successful for us, user friendly. There's been some other social issues, people talk about with Indiegogo, but that aside, I decided to give it a try.
I'm gonna dismiss your social issues. People who say that are full of shit, and I'll explain why. Indiegogo is not just comics. Indiegogo is a lot of different projects.
So it's Kickstarter, right? Yeah.
And same thing with Kickstarter. Also, the problem is that, and I had Tyler James on, and he was saying, well, it's political, isn't it? Because if I say, hey, you're my enemy, and then, my friend says, yeah, he's the enemy, I'm going to go support you because you're fighting against, John. Now I have support, and we look at that, and it's on both sides. There are wars. I mean, no question about it. So at what point, because, if I want to make a point on something, I could politicize it, and I can make it so that if you support me, you're going against X. And that drives traffic. It's just an easy tactic. It's done on everything. Sure. And it's not hard to figure out. Everybody does it, and so with the Indiegogo, when people, and I'm going to just drop it, people say, oh, Comicsgate hangs out there. Bullshit. Okay, there's plenty of books that are there, and the people who say that are on Kickstarter, and then they go on Indiegogo and say, I'm not Comicsgate. I'm saying, if Comicsgate hangs out there and you don't like them and you're not a fan of them, then why are you fucking going out there after your Kickstarter's done?
Right.
Because the stragglers. Bullshit.
Stragglers. Yeah, and but again, it's a discourse you have to have, right? You have to look into it. Hey, these are the things that peers in the communities whose opinions I trust are saying. Kind of looked at that and said, like you said, there may be a small percentage of any crowdfunding that you use, any product you use, could have a percentage that are not aligning with what you want to do socially and politically. But again,
I'm going to ask you a question, and it's a good one because it's going to get right to the point. Are you Coca-Cola?
Pepsi.
No, I don't think you answered the question. So I'm going to ask you the question again. I'll ask the same thing. Are you Pepsi?
I'm Pepsi.
Did you get what I'm asking?
You're asking me to choose?
No. I'm asking you, saying that if you go and take the position, which is what I take, saying, look, I interview whoever I want. I interview whoever's interesting. We have conversations. I'm in both sides. I'm everywhere. I have the luxury because I abide by my rules, not anybody else's. So when I say I'm Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola abides by their rules. They don't abide, or Pepsi abides by their rules, meaning that they'll sell Pepsi to somebody here, somebody there, somebody over there. They don't care because they're Pepsi. I'm an interview show. You're a comic creator. You're not a politician. So who cares where you're at? And that's what's so ridiculous. And again, they just want to bolster their own positions so they can make themselves wealthier and make a political driving traffic source. And that's the problem with the entire tribal entity. And people in America and in the world don't seem to understand that. See, I understand that perfectly. And the only reason why I can say this is because what are you going to do? Cancel my sponsor? I recommend you try, because I brought money to mix them and they don't care.
Well, I do think you're right. There's a lot of tribal think, like you said, Democrat, Republican, Comicsgate, not Comicsgate, whatever, a Pepsi, Coke.
No,
pick our
Pepsi Coke. We can't win that argument. It's
But
like
it's the same thing. We like to treat things like Bears, Packers, right? We like to say, I grew up in Chicago, this is my team. We like to make it very superficial. Now, I won't speak to the Comicsgate thing. I will say my concern is that people who associate with that are very outspoken with things, again, as a social worker, as a human being, which I don't align with. So that it makes me at least want to be aware of what I am doing, right? I want to at least explore it and be mindful of it. I don't want to rule anything out, because like you said, in the end, I am a creator who wants to get projects out. But I don't want to, and again, it's not Indiegogo's fault. They don't do any vetting, right? They just, you can go. I went on there yesterday, and my thing's ready to launch now. I could be, putting up, I don't know, Nazi scum or whatever. I could be doing all kinds of stuff. So again, I think it's
I'm
part
not.
of it is just,
I didn't go to Indiegogo not because of Comicsgate or anything like that.
yeah.
I just think Kickstarter has better traffic, and I also think Kickstarter
That's ultimately what it's about.
Better branding.
Yes.
But you know
Very
what?
easy. You get very much, if you're going to put your time into crowdfunding, Kickstarter gets a lot more passive backers. At least, from what people have told me. And again, I want to see through Indiegogo, because you're right. I think it's just traffic. They're branded. They're assertive. They were one of the first, and they're one of the biggest for a reason. So, but again, you know what? I did Kickstarter. I can do it again. I probably should, revisit it down the road with Depowered. But you know what? We want to try something different. And again, our other books weren't on there yet this year, so I think they might do good on Indiegogo. Different people use different.
I mean, look,
services.
Shotgun Samurai's on Indiegogo. I mean, I love my friend who did Shotgun Samurai. It's a great book, and obviously he's on there for a reason. But again, it's the whole thing is that I don't pick a side. I say what I want to say. I act however I want, and nobody gets to fucking tell me how I run. And if I want to run an Indiegogo, I'll run an Indiegogo. And that's how I view it. And Comicsgate and the other side isn't touching me because I'm hard to fight at this point, because I run and I operate to my own rules. Now, also, I don't think that they, want to touch me because it's not beneficial. What are you going to find? And you know what it is? If they dig something up on me, I'll be like, yep, you got me. What do you got next? And I will legitimately just come out. I will state it. I will say, if they want to know, cool, let's talk about it. And what I find is that it's going to
find out about that Cowboy Bebop comic you bought.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be all over me. They'll be like, yeah, picked up
$32 in debt. He's spending his money like crazy. But again, the reason I bring it up is I still think it's something, as a socially conscious consumer, that you need to look at. Just like with Kickstarter, this next wave, I hope people look at it. If they go to the blockchain and people are having concerns about that, people are going to hesitate to back or to share. It's something we have to navigate as creators, right? We have to be aware of these things that we're participating in for whatever. Otherwise, you're right. Then if we don't agree with it, then we go to strict pre-order and whatever our sales are through our own channels. But even then, Store Envy, they could come out tomorrow and say, I don't know, some hate.
No. I get it. I guess what is. I understand, because I'm not producing a comic. I also am going to do whatever I want with my comics, and I don't really care. I just want to sell books, and that's my goal. And I just want to get listenerships. I just want to bring people, and I want good sponsors, and I run myself a certain way, and I'm on whatever platform I want to be on, and I don't pay much attention to the little percentage points. I just don't. It doesn't do it for me, and I'm not concerned about certain people. And as I stated, you know what it is? I have a bunch of solutions to every problem, and I have some financial means to get those solutions done. So that's the other thing too. And maybe some people just know that, there are consequences in dealing with me, and I'm willing to pursue certain actions. Not to mention that also I am relatively well connected in the comic world. That it is hard to attack somebody who is well connected, because there are people who come to my defense who have influence. So that helps too.
Well, and I will say, if people who haven't used Indiegogo, again, it had been about a decade for me. The interface, it is very user friendly. I was pleased to see that. Again, part of it too is comfortability, right? I've ran so many Kickstarters. There's already people in there. Every time I launch it, it notifies my former backers. It's just, you get used to it. So this was even long before all this, other crap came with Indiegogo versus Kickstarter, whatever. You just get used to it. It's like you said, it's Kickstarter's, the top for a reason. But I'm hoping for good success with Indiegogo. I think, again, I've set the bar, relatively low, so we can just get some more funds in the pipeline and get these books out there. And the book should be coming out in early January. Again, come hell or high water, I'm determined to get it out in the first quarter of 2022. And then we're launching onto another Kickstarter right after that. So, and that was part of my hesitation too. Andrew, you mentioned going to the pre-order. That was part of it too. I had another one planned for January, and I was hesitant to jam them together. Maybe I should have just tabled Depowered for next year. But I kind of, just like, I really wanted to power through it. And now I've run really 3 crowdfundings, right? I ran Kickstarter, pre-order, now Indiegogo. I'm digging my own grave here and doing a lot of extra work, but hopefully it'll pay off.
Whoa. The word of the day here is infrastructure. And that's what you need, is infrastructure. It's what I am building out very slowly. And once you have infrastructure, things get a lot easier in a lot of ways. And I think that's something that, a lot of creators don't understand either, is that, infrastructure matters. And it is very, very helpful. One of the greatest things, and my mom sort of forced it on me, and I'm very honest about it, is that I was doing interviews Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night. And so I was only doing one a night. And she's like, well, you're home here, maybe you have to do it on 2 nights. And it created a very different sense for a show. And it actually opened up other opportunities, because doing an additional interview tonight, for instance, is, it frees tomorrow night, it frees Friday up, it frees Saturday, Sunday up, it frees Monday up, and it changes the way business can be done, where it's not that much more expensive. And that's an infrastructure move for me. And it's a big one. And I'm going to continue it moving forward for a while, because it changes it. And right now I'm single, but if I had a girlfriend, maybe Thursday and Friday night are date nights now. First, the idea that now I'm not doing an interview every single night, and then maybe she's going to have to figure out, saying, well, my boyfriend's actually making money podcasting, and he's busy 2 nights out of the week.
Yeah.
So,
what advice can your mom give me that I can take away from this interview?
I don't know. You're going to have to speak to her, but you'd be surprised. She's got great advice. She's a published author by a big publishing company. So there you go. She had a book come out a while ago. So
she made you, so she must have done something.
Yeah.
The character.
Half of me.
Yeah, right. Got to give Pops credit.
He's still around too, so it's good. And my parents are still together, so that's good too. That's important. But I digress right there.
Sure.
That's a good thing though. So that should be celebrated in America, is when parents and families stay together.
Absolutely.
It doesn't always happen that way though. It's unfortunate.
No, what, 50%? Something like that. Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, it's horrific. It's horrific. But apparently, cool fact is that once you make $250,000 or more in a marriage, the divorce rate goes down to like 20%. Because more money actually stabilizes marriage. And
all walks of life, right? That's why you're so money focused.
The reason why it stabilizes it is that both partners now have something significant to lose. If you're making $50,000 as a couple, you don't have much to lose if you get divorced.
Well, and it isn't the number one argument about money, and those problems cause more stress. And now I'll talk about the social part, but you're talking about the logic part again.
Number one reason why marriages fail is money and lying about money and money habits.
Yeah.
People in marriages have stayed together when one has cheated on the other. The marriage hasn't stayed the same, but the marriage is still legal. There's a difference between a marriage on paper and a marriage in the sense of we're a team or we still love each other. Versus those two things are different. But that's the reason why, and this is relevant to Kickstarter, is that when you don't have a money problem in Kickstarter, you're not stressed. One of the things, and I'm very honest, it's no secret that I am fully funded for season 3 right now on my Kickstarter. My Kickstarter is not going to be a stressful time.
Bonus.
It's going to be anything but, it's going to be stress free. That's why my goal is $750. Now, I need more money. No question about it. Because more money means I could do more things. It means that when I don't have a sponsor or I need new equipment, I can cover that. That's what it means. It's not like I'm going saying, I got $4,000, I'm going on vacation, guys, screw you. That's not what that means. It's much like if all of a sudden Deep Powered was fully funded, right? Because of Indiegogo thing said, let me try Kickstarter again, and you raised another $4,000. That might take you to finish out the entire series.
Yeah, be a lot less stressful.
And then you're using Kickstarter now as a pre-order form, and you're like, look, I can now actually go to cons. I can now actually make a gloss cover. For instance, I could go make special hollow foils. I can go add 3 or 4 more pages to the book and not charge everybody because we're already funded and that I want to go and make this better. Or I could go use more of like a plastic gloss cover instead of a paper cover, for instance. And I'm not going to bring that cost. I'm not going to add to the book. Or I could charge $1 less shipping, or I could eat $2 of the shipping cost.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, money. Again, it is part of the business. You got to be smart about it. So I appreciate. Yeah, you've enlightened me on a lot of things, and hopefully, people who watch this have had enjoyed a good conversation about lots of different things.
Well, I'm not going to keep you here all night, but we are going to talk about my favorite other topic, and I do want to talk about Kickstarter. I think we beat down Kickstarter enough, but I do want to talk about cons and COVID. So where do you feel COVID is going? Because we just saw Anime NYC, and it is evidently clear that despite regulations and vaccinations, cons are still not safe. I think Anime NYC in New York City and the Java Center proved that with the Omicron thing that somebody had it. And obviously I think they had it at the con. And which means a bunch of people had it at the con or caught it at the con by nature. So where do you feel that COVID is going in the next few months? Because clearly the issue isn't solved.
Yeah, I think the next year is still going to be rough. I did attend C2E2. Another one of the larger ones. The crowd was not very big.
Did you see my guest before me there?
Who was it?
Doran from Merc Magazine.
Oh yeah. And actually, I apologize. I was not aware. Saw him around, but did not stop by.
It's all right. It's all right. He was there, so it's all good. But they got some cool stuff. Jamie Tyndall and all.
I only attended as a fan. I only attended one day. I usually go 3 days. It's my home con. It's right here in Chicago, 30 minutes away. But I'll be honest, I was feeling pretty uneasy. It was great to see some friendly faces. People said, it was a good experience, but I could tell attendance was way down. Vendors were way down.
So I'm going to ask you a question about that. So me and Doran were speaking about this, and I threw something out at him where I said, when I go to a con, I look for stables. DC, Marvel, CGC, Image, Dark Horse, Dynamite, IDW. I look for those booths. And my understanding of C2E2 was none of those guys were there.
Yeah, but honestly, DC and Marvel have not been at C2E2. I think at least they've said because they're in between coasts, they've had a hard time. They haven't been there in a couple of years. Actually, Dark Horse was probably the biggest one for a while, and they weren't here this year either. Image had Skybound, but I'm not sure they had a full booth either. So, which I like. I actually look for the indies when I go, and maybe other people don't because they're paying $80 a ticket. I get that. You want to go and get your Marvel and DC stuff, but I appreciated, it felt more like an indie show.
Fair enough, fair enough. But so obviously that's sort of COVID, and then where do you think sort of like comics are going to go and all that stuff? Because and even cons with comics, because obviously we all know my position. It's not a secret that I'm part of Digital Pivot 2.0, where I believe that that doesn't mean comics are digital. It means that I want to sell as much product to people online as possible. So I want to basically have my books come into my house and then ship them out and have the post office pick everything up.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to go to a con to sell books because I want to sell books to the entire world.
Yeah. I'll be honest, even before I left Kingbone Press, we were kind of there with you. We didn't do great at the big shows. We had interesting product. We were kind of niche. I feel like that's kind of going to be my role too. I'll do some conventions. I'm doing one in Northwest Indiana Con in February 2022. We do great at the smaller shows, but the bigger shows, I feel like it's a lot of work, to work the whole weekend and only make, $100-200, even if you have a great weekend. So I don't see myself doing a lot of the larger shows for COVID reasons as well.
I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm going to be producing a book in March, late or early April, and I'm not going to be at cons with that book. I don't want to be. It doesn't make sense for me.
I haven't debuted. I do give contributors copies, so the books get out there, and it's great to have some sort of presence. And it was awesome to walk down the alley and I saw my colorist for CPS and he had the book and he sold some, and that was great. I love seeing people face to face, and some of the best moments I've had are at conventions and meeting people. But I don't see Part-Time Comics, at least in the near future, having a big presence at conventions.
I see my position in books where I'll wholesale somebody a book. I got no problem wholesaling somebody books. But me personally, having a table, no thank you. Because at this stage, as an individual, I could go sign books and then send them in for CGC for yellow labels. And as a comic creator, once I get that label, I get a membership at that level, and I can send in my books and handle that myself. So why, in my right mind, if I could do that all from my house, when I do it, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah, you may change on that down the road. I do think there is some value, again, in having FaceTime with fans. I think it's harder for writers. We pay a lot for the table, and we can't do sketches and stuff to really recoup that cost quickly. So you got to think of different things. I think you're somebody who thinks of different things, bring stickers, bring other things that you could do that. But yeah, especially like the cost of these tables are not going down. The attendance was down. They capped attendance at like New York was capped. And they're not charging less. So you're paying $450, $425 for a table. You're spending that time where you could be working on products or working your job. There's a lot to it. You might be booking a hotel. To me, I'd rather just pay for advertising. I'd rather just say, if I was going to spend $400 on a table this weekend, I'll just drop $400 in Instagram ads and see where it goes. I don't know.
or buy podcast ads.
Like
this is something, obviously, this is my nature, where I'm running ads right now. I do live reads, and what you get with a live read is you get a permanent ad on my show. I don't know, it's better than buying a comic ad in a comic book, and I'll explain why. I don't edit out my ads. So in the description, and this is the deal that my ads. And that's why my ads are anywhere from 10 to 15, $20 sometimes in a live read, because in every segment where I post this, so this is on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on my Facebook group, it's on Twitch. Actually, I don't put it on Twitch, because that stuff's only up for 14 days. But then when I reshoot out onto Facebook, when I reshoot out onto Rumble, when I then put it into a podcast, that ad is relevant. So if you have a constant product, this is why Mixum is getting a great deal. Mm-hmm. And anybody else who works with it, I'm very honest about it, is that if you have a product that's going to be around for the next 6 years, you're going to want to book me. Because, it's one of those things where once this podcast thing hits and I'm uploading these things, and it's going to be a little bit of time, probably June, maybe even August, to get fully caught up when I launch my podcast come March, early April. But, because the backlog is huge. But once that's in there, your ads up there permanently with the link in the show notes. So, I
That's
mean,
great. For some of our other books, we've definitely contacted, and that's something we'd definitely be interested in the future.
I'm
Again,
not trying to pitch you what I'm
oh
trying
no,
to
I think
explain.
I think these are it's part of the natural conversation we're having. These are things people need to think about, even if it is trading ads with your buddy's book or whatever. Figure out a way to get yourself out there different. But yes, we probably won't have a huge con attendance. Again, some of that's my own personal feelings about where we're at, safety wise, and having I have my mother lives with us. I have 2 kids, so I have to take that into account as well. So
I have a physical disability, and my immune system is more susceptible to COVID. And unfortunately, I'm vaccinated, but I don't trust it. I don't trust that it's effective. I'm very, very honest, and I'm making personal decisions. I work from home, and I don't go out. I went out for the first time in 3 weeks yesterday.
wow.
To go see a movie, with my friends. And went to the movies. Nobody was in the movie theater. It was great. There was 10 of us in the movie theater. It was awesome. So I'm across plus. That's why my Facebook thing is up there, guys. If you're a Facebook friend, I put up the Cross Plus is better than Top Gun. And Robert Nix disagrees clearly. So yeah, I'm sure on Friday night we're gonna have this discussion. With Tom Hutchinson of all people. I'm sure it's going to be great, and if Jim Noble's in there too, it's going to be a very interesting night. But I digress right there. Clearly, this show's going all the way downhill. We're at the end of the year.
Right.
All right. But anyway, I don't want to keep you here all night. So obviously, we didn't get to talk about your other books, so that's kind of unfortunate. So I'm sorry about that.
No, I appreciate the thorough dive into Depowered. That's the current one, but again, I posted it in the chat, our web store, if you want to pick up the other books. I feel like, I feel like we're putting some time into some cool and interesting characters, and I'm glad even just from the preview we sent you that you're getting kind of where we're going with these stories, as we want to tell some personal character driven stories.
Yeah, so obviously, where can people find you? Because obviously, where can people find the pre-order on Store NV? Where can people back the Indiegogo or pledge to the Indiegogo? Where can people find you on social media? Where can people, website, email list, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook pages, things like that? Because obviously, that support is a wide net.
So part of spelling our name weird was hopefully people will be able to find it. So Part-Time Comics, if you search it without any hyphens or dashes on all the major social medias, including Store Envy, Part-Time Comics with an X, .storenvy.com, Part-Time Comics on Twitter, Part-Time Comics on Instagram, Part-Time Comics on Facebook. I'm anti_drummer if you want to follow my personal account on Twitter, where I post a lot of nonsense, and I'm on there way too much. But yeah, hit me up on any of the social medias. We love the follows, and again, we appreciate your time, Andrew.
Yeah, and I'm happy to give it because it's the end of the year, and I wanted to get you on, and I couldn't get you on back like 2 months ago because it wouldn't have been fair to helping your project. And I'm not in the business of not being reasonable, or I at least try. I'm sometimes not perfect at it, but I knew that I couldn't do it. It was just too tight for me to with everything that was going on. But I'm glad we got to do it now because that's important. But as I've been saying, I'm going to keep saying, is you got to support indie. What that means is you have to back people's Kickstarters, Indiegogos, pre-orders, whatever they're using to sell their books. You got to back it. And then even going further, if they do have other books, and let's say that they have a Indiegogo or a Kickstarter that is not your cup of tea, but they have other projects, you should go pick up those books too, because any book you buy from a comic creator goes to funding that next book, whether that's directly or indirectly. For instance, obviously a lot of people sometimes pay their bills with, comic books and selling comic books. And, if the lights are stayed on and they have food in their house, they can go create and they could actually go make your book faster. Or conversely, let's say that they're trying to recoup their money. The faster they recoup their money, the less they're in debt, the faster they can push out the next book, or use that money instead of recouping to pump into the next book and get you your next product out there. So it is very important to actually financially buy people's products. And spend your money on books. Now, I understand that money's tight. Obviously, I have a budget every month, and I do not back everybody's project, but I try to share out as many of them as I possibly can. And so you should be doing that first and foremost, even if you are backing financial projects and doing things like that, because that does go a long way. You never know who is going to see that. I have a very large network of people, both on a professional and independent level. So that's something that is very influential when I share out a project, or if I say, hey, this is my favorite project of September, and I've done that. Obviously Shotgun Samurai is one of my favorite projects of December. And it's clear that I'm going to be picking that book up tomorrow. And then there's another book I'm going to be picking up as well this month because it looks awesome. And I'm very open and bold when I say it. And I let people know on Twitter what I'm backing. So that's something that I think people need to do. But following people on Twitter, Facebook pages, Instagram goes a long way. So you should be doing that. Now about me, obviously, I appreciate everybody who shares what I do, likes this. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're on Facebook, please like the Facebook page. Please share it out. It goes a long way, means a lot to me. Feel free to comment. I do not really read the comments all that often because I'm in the interview and I'm trying to focus. But even going further, obviously, if you're printing a book, use Mixum. I know John's going to use Mixum, and hopefully he's going to make me look good with my sponsor. So hopefully that'll be good. And I'm looking forward to you using Mixum because, well, I like Mixum, and they got me sort of halfway across the thing with this, and they're keeping me in business in a lot of ways. Furthermore, you need to bag and board your comics and buy bags and boards. BCW Supplies, Pop Anime Comics. That is POPANIMECOMICS. 10% off your entire order. When you're like me and you buy in bulk, as I stated, $500 worth of this stuff, that's $50 off. Doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're doing that 2-3 times a year, it adds up. But I don't just buy stuff like bags and boards. I buy long boxes, short boxes, everything you can imagine I buy for my business. And BCW Supplies is great, and you can use that code as many times as you want to buy what you need. So that's super helpful. So go do that now. And then finally, if you really love this show and you want to support me, you can also buy me a coffee. It's similar to Patreon, but it's only a one-time thing, and I appreciate anywhere from $5 to $25, sometimes $50. And I do have some perks such as ads and guaranteed guest spots because I do get solicited a lot. And so if you want a guarantee and want to get my attention, that's a really good way how to do it. I will let everybody know that obviously I do have Mixum as a sponsor, and I have brought them significant money, so I do have a nice viewership and, well, ads work on my show. So please consider doing it. There's no guarantees, but, obviously I'm not that expensive, all things considering. You could DM me on Facebook. You could DM me at Andrew Becca Davis on Facebook. You could DM me on Pop Anime Comics. You could DM me in a variety of other ways. You could shoot me a Twitter DM if you're interested, and that's that. So that's all I got, and I'm going to give you the final word.
Final word is thank you, Andrew. Again, I don't have aspirations to be Alan Moore or anything like that. These are the kind of moments that I enjoy, meeting people and talking and having interviews, and these are the kind of moments that make the comics journey worth it for me. So thanks for talking to me tonight.
Well, no problem, and I think that is a wrap.